Hello, and welcome to Aldsidu. This is the third and final video. Actually, I'm going to have a fourth video, but the fourth video is basically going to be probably about an hour-long video where I combine all three videos into one. I will be doing that one tomorrow night. This is the final and third video I'm doing tonight, but hey, this will cover all the heathen holy days, the pre-Christian holy days, not the Wiccan holy days, or the Wicked-true holy days, or the Asatru holy days, or the Christo-pagan holidays. We're actually going to be discussing the historical pre-Christian heathen holy days in this video. Now, I'm giving lots of sources in this video, so please feel free to pause this video. And again, Aldsidu means old ways. It's cliche today for so many heathens to say, oh, we do the old ways. But in reality, the old ways takes research and time. And I'm not talking about Google research. I'm talking about reading Eddas, sagas, historical sources, looking over the archaeological evidence, the runic calendar rods, the runic prime staffs that list the holidays and when they were, showing that Yule was long after, well, not long after the solstice, but Yule was after the solstice. So we're going to discuss the actual heathen holy days, the actual pre-Christian heathen holy days, and we're going to discuss the timing, their meaning, their purpose, and when they were in pre-Christian heathen times. Well researched. So enjoy. Feel free to pause the video a lot because I'm going to give a lot more sources in this video than I did in the first two. So, as I stated in my first two videos, the goal is to be the most comprehensive video on YouTube on historical pre-Christian holy days and timekeeping. So I'm going to try to post more sources than any other video. And again, we're discussing Aldsidu, or old customs, or fyrn or fornsiðr, many spellings in the historical sources that were the words for the historical pre-Christian religion of the Germanic and Scandinavian peoples. So this video is a culmination of over 20 years of my personal research on this subject. And just a reminder, the Scandinavian peoples are Germanic peoples, so I'm going to be using the term Germanic throughout this video. Germanic peoples venerated the Aesir, and while this is a first century map and the location of the Germanic peoples in Europe are here, Germanic peoples did eventually move to Angleland and also uninhabited Iceland. But not everyone in Europe venerated the Aesir, the Basques, the Celts, the Balkans, the Slavs, the Romans, the Greeks. They all had different gods, different pantheons of gods, different holy days, different rituals, different belief systems, and different calendars. So yes, while Proto-Indo-European studies of a long time ago, maybe the peoples were similar at one point in time, but over time Europe became multilingual as it is today, multicultural as it is today, and this no doubt was true of the Germanic peoples and the European peoples in general, that Europe was multicultural when Christianity was introduced. So, contrary to popular opinion, the Wiccan Wheel of the Year was not the historical calendar of the Germanic peoples. So, sorry, Marvel True, but this is not fact. Dr. Andreas E. Zalner, who teaches in Uppsala and Stockholm, who is an archaeologist, he states very clearly, if we were to browse the internet for holy days of the Germanic people, we mainly find passages presenting an octopartite year circle, the so-called 8-spoked wheel of the year, based on the solstices, the equinoxes, and the 4-moon feast in between. This year circle is absolutely no historical basis, although it is very popular in neo-pagan circles, especially within Wicca and eclectic Asatru. There is no verified evidence for such a year circle as basis for the seasonal festivities. The same is true for the Celtic feast within the year's circle, because the Gauls too, or Celts by the way, used a lunar solar calendar, as we know for the examples of the Caligni and Villiers de Heria. The Caligny calendar is an archaeological stele that they found, I guess it's not really like an Egyptian stele, for example, but it is a lunar-solar calendar that they found. So no ifs, ands, or buts, even the Celtic peoples were lunar-solar and had moons for months of the year. Now, continuing Dr. Zalner's quote, he says, if one has internalized such ideas, one should get rid of them immediately. So to be blunt, I'm talking about the real scholars. I'm not talking about linguists in Colorado. I'm talking about archaeologists and those who make their living in Swedish museums, who look at the Eddas and the sagas and the archaeological evidence in Sweden, Norway, Iceland, Denmark, the other Germanic areas. They understand this very clearly, that the Germanic peoples were lunar solar, and the Wiccan wheel of the year, which came about in the 1960s, by the way, was not the historical calendar of the Germanic peoples. So again, I really recommend this book by Dr. Andreas E. Zalner, The Lunar Solar Calendar of the Germanic Peoples. It's available on Amazon. So, I understand that I'm not going to win a popularity contest with this video. So those that want Marvel True, Lego True, Viking True, whatever, I guess I'm not your source. But for those looking for the pre-Christian heathen holidays of the Germanic peoples, let's discuss them. The pre-Christian heathen people in Germanic Scandinavian lands celebrated 3 bloats a year, each lasting 3 days. They celebrated the beginning of winter, midwinter, and the beginning of summer. These were the 3 major bloats a year. These are called winter nights, midwinter nights, and sidu bloat. As an FYI, as I said, Yule is another name for midwinter. Midwinter nights. Bloat is another name for sidu bloat. See Dr. Zalner's book on page 120. So let's get rid of the Lego figures and the Marvel figures, and let's talk about some real gods of the Germanic peoples. So Ynglinga Saga, chapter 8. Odin established the same law in this land that had been enforced in Asatru. On winter day, or the first day of winter, there should be a bloat for a good year. The middle of winter, a bloat for a good crop, and the third bloat should be on summer day, the first day of summer, a victory bloat. So this is a command by Odin. He established a law. So that's a pretty stiff passage. Here's another one. Now it is their old ways. Old ways, what is that word? Aldsidu. Actually, it's fornsiðr in this passage. Now it is their old ways to hold a bloat in house manuther, a moon, to welcome in the winter, a second in the middle of winter, and a third to welcome the summer. This is in Olaf's Saga Helga, the slaying of Olvir of Ege. And, of course, the Saga of St. Olaf. As long as heathendom lasted, he wanted to hold 3 blood offerings a year, one on winter nights, the second in midwinter, and the third at the start of summer. But when he became a Christian, he kept up in the same way with the feasts. In the autumn, or housed, which I don't like that translation. It's really housed. In harvest time, he held a great feast of friends, and then in winter, a Yule feast, and then he bade many men to come to him again. And the third he held at Pascha, which is the word for Passover, because the Last Supper was Christian Passover, which became known as Easter. So it's very clear from saga passages in general that there are 3 major bloats a year, and heck, even Odin commands it. Dr. Andreas E. Zalner says in his book, The Lunar Solar Calendar of Germanic Peoples, on page 90, he says, midsummer festivities had no connection with the olden cult. And that's true. There were 3 major bloats a year. And again, the start of winter, which began the year, midwinter, and the start of summer. And some years there was not a midsummer point, because in a lunar solar system, when you add a 13th moon to the year, you have 7 moons of summer. So, and 3 out of every 8 years, you're adding a 3rd moon to the calendar that keeps the solar calendar and the lunar calendar in mind. Hence, the calendar is a lunisolar calendar. So let's discuss the three major heathen holy days in general. So winter nights is the 3 nights that celebrate the start of the year, and the year starts with winter. So Dr. Andreas E. Zalner said, as previously mentioned, the Germanic tribes started the year with the beginning of winter, i.e. the winter nights. So please note that winter nights began in the full moon of the 10th moon of the year, called Haustmanúðr to the Norse peoples. House Bloat is another name for winter nights. In Gisela Saga sur Sonar, chapter 9, Thorgrim meant to have a house bloat on winter nights and to bloat to Frey. Now, I'm unsure why people in modern heathery cannot connect house bloat to the Norse moon name Haustmanúðr. It's pretty straightforward in my opinion, just like the Yule Manúðr, Yule moon, or Haustmanúðr, harvest moon. There's a harvest bloat on winter nights. There's a Yule bloat on the full moon of Yule Manúðr, or Yule moon. The Norse word veternatum is used in this passage. There's a house bloat on veternatum. So, I mean, this is pretty straightforward. And also, I should note that in a lunar solar calendar, the winter nights would begin on the full moon of the 11th moon of the year, when there's an extra moon thrown into the summer. Because in all reality, winter nights is, the first night of winter. 3 full moons later would be Yule full moon, and 3 full moons after Yule full moon is sidu, the start of summer. So the midway point is a full moon in between the full moon to start the winter, and the halfway point is Yule on a full moon, and it's halfway between the full moon that starts winter and the full moon that starts summer. There's basically 3 major full moons a year, but in a quarterly system, there's 4 full moon time markers. And in 5 of every 8 years, you have 12 moons. So, a quarter year is 3 full moons apart. But in a 13th leap year, you're going to have 3 full moons, 3 full moons, 3 full moons, 4 full moons. Hopefully that makes sense. So Bede stated in 725 CE in his work De Temporum Ratione, the moon by which they began their winter season was called winter Filleth, a name compounded of the terms for winter and full moon, because from the full moon of that moon, winter was thought to begin. So, this is the earliest Germanic calendar we have recorded by the Venerable Bede, or Beda. This is clearly evidence that winter nights, or here winter full moon, began on a full moon. And this is a smoking gun, in my opinion, proving without doubt the lunisolar nature of the pre-Christian heathen calendar. This also agrees with the Tacitus quote I gave earlier, that the Germanic peoples met on new and full moons. If winter nights begins on a full moon, then winter's midpoint must be in a full moon, as well as winter's ending point must be on a full moon. Simply put, winter nights is on a full moon, 3 full moons later is Yule, and 3 full moons after Yule is sidu, the start of summer. So here's a quote from the Saga Olaf Haraldsson in Heimskringla. The king received news from Trondheim about farmers holding bloats on winter nights with great wassails. It was reported to the king that love cups were blessed, honoring the Aesir according to the old pagan religion fyrn sidu. Also, cattle and horses were slaughtered and altars sprinkled with blood. The bloats were accompanied with prayers for a bountiful harvest. It is also reported that the gods were irate due to people from Hålogaland converting to Christianity. So why were the bloats accompanied with prayers for a bountiful harvest? Because that's what housed bloat means, a harvest bloat. So winter nights is a house bloat or a harvest bloat, and it's also a bloat for a good year. So I think I duplicated that. My apologies. Gisela Saga sur Sonar, chapter 6 says, and now the summer slips away, and the first winter night was now at hand. So again, here's a passage that says there's more than one winter night. because there's 3 major bloats a year. They're each 3 days. I'll get to that shortly on proof that each of the 3 bloats is 3 days in length. But Gisela made a symbol and bade his friends to it. He wished to have a gathering and so welcomed both the winter and his friends. But he had left off all heathen bloats since he had been in Viborg with Sigurd. He bade to the feast both the Thorkels and his cousins, the sons of Bjartmar, so that the day that the guests were looked for, Gisela made ready his home. Now, in Iceland and Norway, winter nights was also called Bloat, like in Vigga Saga chapter 6. At the start of winter, a symbol was prepared and a Bloat in which observants all were expected to take part, but Gloom sat in his place and did not attend it. So in Iceland and Norway, it appears that Bloat accompanied winter nights. So let's discuss the 3 nights of Yule midwinter. Gisela Saga of Magnus the Blind, chapter 6. On the evening of Yule, remember in my first video I said that, winter nights, Yule nights, Weihnachten for Christmas in modern German, which means sacred grove nights, coming from Germanic religion. So at sundown is when the bloats start. So on the eve of Yule, Julaften, King Harald came to Björgen and brought his ships to Floruvagar. My pronunciation sucks, my apologies. He would not fight during Yule because of its holiness, but King Magnus got ready for him in the town. He had a sling raised out on Holm, and he had chains made of iron and partly of 3 stocks. He had these laid across the Vag from the king's residence. He had foot traps forged and cast over Jansvolds, and Yule was kept holy for 3 days when no work was done. So we can see that all the Germanic feasts are 3 days. And Saga of Hakon the Good, chapter 15, this saga records the Christianization of Yule, the forceful moving of Yule from the full moon of Yulmanuther, called Hokanot, to be on December 25th, the solstice of the Julian calendar. Yes, I'm going to come out and say it. Today, modern Asatru follows the forced Christianization and the Christian practices of Hakon the Good, and this is more Christian than it's heathen. So why is Christmas called Yule in Scandinavia today? Because the Saga of Hakon the Good, chapter 15, which the quote starts here, explains the story. And we have similar stories outside of this in the sagas too, but this is the most famous one. So Hakon the Good, chapter 15. King Hakon was a good Christian when he came to Norway. As the whole country was heathen, with much heathen bloat, and as many great people, as well as the favor of the common people, were to be conciliated, he resolved to practice his Christianity in private. But he kept Sundays and the Friday fast, and some token of the greatest holy days. He made a law that the feast of Yule, the feast of Yule, the festival of Yule, should begin at the same time as the Christian people held it, and that every man under penalty should brew a meal of malt into ale, and therewith keep Yule holy as long as it lasted. Before him, as in before Hakon the Good, the first night of Yule was on Hokanot, that is midwinter night, and Yule was held for 3 days. So it is clear from this passage that midwinter night is not at the same time that the Christians kept it, but it was moved there when he made a law that the Feast of Yule should begin at the same time as the Christian people held it. And he did this because the people would not just straight out quit heathenry and just join the church. But if he moves Yule to the same time the Christians hold it, it's the first step in the Christianization of Norway. So we have a whole saga dedicated to this. And by the way, we have the Chronicon of Theotmar of Merseburg, which is 300 years older than the Eddas and Sagas. What does Theotmar of Merseburg say? As I have heard odd stories concerning their ancient midwinter or Yule bloats, I will not allow this custom to be ignored. The middle of that kingdom is called Letterend, or Lera, in the region of Sealand. All the people gathered every 9 years in January. That is after we have celebrated the birth of the Lord, and there they offered to their gods bloats. Now let me point out, Theodmar of Merseburg, while he's in northern Germany, he is a Greek Orthodox Christian, so the birthday of his Lord is on January 6th, not December 25th. But it doesn't matter whether it's the Roman Catholic Christ Mass or the Greek Orthodox Christ Mass. Yule is celebrated after they celebrate the birth of the Lord Jesus Christ, and that's when the heathens in January did their great bloats. And once out of every 8 years, as I explained in my earlier video, not once out of every 9, they did this sacrifice during Yule. And we have 2 runestones proving the 9-year sacrifice was every 8 years. And here are the names of both runestones, and you can see pictures of these in Dr. Andreas E. Zalner's book, The Lunar Solar Calendar of the Germanic Peoples, page 154. Again, it's always good to listen to the Swedish scholars who study the archaeological evidence as well as the literary evidence. So, please let me repeat, Yule was on Hakka, a night, showing a night as the beginning of Yule. So, since Yule was originally on Hakka and it was moved to be at the same time as Xmas, it is clear that Christ Mass and Yule were at 2 different times, and December 25th was on the solstice of the Julian calendar when the people of Rome felt the solstice was. So again, this is clear evidence that there is a lunar solar element. Dr. Andreas Nordberg, who teaches in both Uppsala and at Stockholm at the university, Dr. Andreas Nordberg, the world's foremost scholar on Norse holy days, makes it clear in his book on the dating of Yule. The pre-Christian Yule feast occurs at the first full moon after the first new moon following the winter solstice, while the disting took place at the 3rd full moon according to the same method of calculation. Here is the source, page 4. And I do recommend that book. You can get it for free in academia.edu. Page 4 is actually in English. And then after you read 130 Swedish pages, if you can read Swedish, there is a 20-page summary in English at the end of the book. Trust me, the 20-page summary in English is better than the 125-some pages in Swedish because it gets to the point quicker. So I'm all about reading summaries. But if you're doing deep research, you can use Google Translate. If you don't know Swedish, plug a paragraph into Google Translate 1 paragraph at a time and put in the time to research it. And Dr. Zalner, of course, says in his book, it's a common misinterpretation to think that it happened midwinter on the winter solstice. According to the prime staff, the midwinter feast was celebrated in the so-called Hakka on January 12th. Thus, it has been a calendar fixed date in the middle of the Julian month. Applying a lunar calendar, this is on the full moon date, also in accordance with Yule moon and the disting rules, this time in the first lunar moon of the year beginning after the solstice. So basically in Iceland later, when they became Christian, they abandoned the moons. They kept their heathen moon names, but they made a year of 12 30-day months having nothing to do with the moons. And when they did this, they placed Yule first on a fixed date of January 12th every year. So, this isn't discussed by modern Asatru either, is it? This calendar is called the Mystery Calendar, and recently, in the last few months, it's picked up some traction because one of the heathen societies has been talking about it. The Mystery Calendar is the first post-Christian calendar system in Iceland. It is post-Christian, but it only starts to deviate from the fixed heathen lunar calendar. So it's like the first step to a full-blown solar calendar. So it is an important calendar, but it is not a pre-Christian calendar. The pre-Christian calendar is a full moon date in the middle of January. So here are 4 bloats, are passages on the Yule Bloats. I'm not going to read them all, but if you want to pause the video, in my blog article, I found in Olaf Saga alone, 33 mentions of Yule. I mean, there's 103 in Heimskringla that I found. So there's a lot of mentions of Yule in the sagas. They're really easy to find. The sagas are free online, and you can use Control F and look for the word Yule. You can find the sagas online in English and in the original languages. So if you want to pause the video and read these four passages that I shared, enjoy. Now let's get to the third and final bloat of the year, called Summer Bloat or Victory Bloat. Sigur Bloat means victory bloat. I was tossed from an Asatru group once. It's kind of a funny story. It's one of the reasons why I started the Aldsidu group, but the founder of that group, his favorite TV show is called The Last Kingdom, and The Last Kingdom came out the same day that they tossed me. And I did a binge watch that day of the entire season 2, and it was in episode 3, if I remember correct, where young Ragnar is looking for Uhtred, and he comes to an Icelandic man and asks about the slave trader that had Uhtred, and he said, "Come back after Sigur Bloat." So I was tossed from an Asatru group because I made up Sigur Bloat, which I didn't. But Netflix that same day, the founder of that group's favorite TV show was The Last Kingdom, and The Last Kingdom has a passage discussing Sigur Bloat on the Netflix show. So apparently Netflix knows a lot more Swedish heathenry, I guess, than some Asatru groups. But nonetheless, Sigur Bloat is an Old Norse word that means victory bloat. Sometimes it's spelled S-I-G-R, sometimes it's S-I-G-U-R. It's also called Var Bloat and Summer Bloat. I've said this passage before, but the Ynglinga Saga lists the 3 great bloats of the year, where Odin establishes the law in his land, that there's 3 bloats a year. And the last one, he says the 3rd bloat should be on Summer Day, which is the first day of summer, and it's a victory bloat. So at the beginning of summer, you want to bloat for victory because that's when the war season happens. And, when I was tossed from that Asatru group, they looked up Ynglinga Saga 8, which I mentioned. I said, no, Ynglinga Saga 8 says Sigur Bloat. And I got tossed because it was the last comment I read before suddenly I couldn't read the group anymore. When I refreshed, I was gone. But they said, Sigur Bloat doesn't exist, but Victory Bloat does. Stop making up bloats. So there it is. But Olaf Saga, Heimskringla Olaf Saga Helga. In Sweden, there was an age-old custom while they were still heathen that there should be a bloat of Sala during Goa moon. Now, the word moon doesn't actually happen in that passage. I probably should have put it in parentheses. If you look at the Icelandic, it's not there. But if I say December, I don't have to say that it's a month. Readers know if I said December, or hearers know that December is a month. So if I say it happens during Goa, it's like saying Christmas happens during December. But during Goa, which is a moon, they would hold a bloat for peace and victory. What does Sigur Bloat mean? Victory bloat. And people from all over Sweden would, of course, go to Uppsala to do the bloat. So, these are the main bloats of the year. And by the way, the Indiculus Superstitionum et Paganiarum, I'm probably butchered that Latin to hell. But nonetheless, that's an early 8th century, in the first half of the 8th century. So you're talking like 740-ish. But this Indiculus document is very important. Because while it's an 8th century document, it lists behaviors that are outlawed in Germania. And one of them lists a victory moon, which I believe is reference to Sigur Bloat. And in the same document as the Indiculus Superstitionum et Paganiarum, there is a baptismal vow forced on the old Saxons to renounce Thunar, Woden, and Sosnoth as their gods. So since in the same manuscript we have a list of 30 behaviors outlawed in Germania, One of them is a bloat during victory moon. I mean, to me, this is a no-brainer that it's sidu bloat. And plus, Dr. Scott T. Shell, who's now at Northwestern University in Evanston, he attends our local group in Chicago, and he believes linguistically that this is a reference to sidu bloat, and that it's very probable that the Saxons called the moon, the bloat, and the full moon to start summer was indeed called sidu bloat. So I do believe that the old Saxons had the same faith as the Scandinavians, are all Germanic peoples, and therefore the three major bloats during the year, the start of winter, midwinter, and sidu bloat to start summer. So this video got a little longer than I would have liked, but this is part 3. I will do probably an hour-long video doing all of them in one video for simplicity. Doing that tomorrow night, though. But come visit us at www.aldsidu.com. It's a free website. We have a networking site there. I've got 110 blog articles where I quote the sagas and eddas and historical sources hundreds of times in them. It's all for free. I don't ask for money via Patreon. My books are for free. My YouTubes are free. I'm not going to monetize, so enjoy. Let's not put ads in these videos so you guys can like these better. This is not about making money. This is about spreading pre-Christian heathenry for free to my users. So, and I am a heathen, by the way, so I'm not like a Christian Colorado guy who's a linguist trying to make money doing this on the side. And I respect people who make money, but I am a heathen and I actually live this. So, hey, like and subscribe, and we do need more heathen scholars. We need lots of us. So please, for those interested, study these sources. You can find them for free. Reach out. You can contact me. I'm friendly. Reach out and we'll engage. And all the best to you. Like and subscribe. Thank you.